Welcome to the Real Estate Sit Down presented by WB Homes. My name is Blair Berg, and today we'll be talking about the home buying process. So I thought, who better to bring on than someone I've actually bought a home with, Maria Gilson. Maria, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And just a little insight here. Maria does not work in the real estate field, has a regular W-2 job, so I thought it'd be good to get kind of her outsider opinion on this. So how did you feel about the home buying process?
It was a little less intimidating than kind of I initially thought it would be. Overall, pretty smooth, I would say.
That's good. All right. So out there, if you're a little worried about entering the home buying process, someone from the outside says it's not that bad. She lived through it, obviously. So we're just going to dive right in with the home buying process. So the first step I would say in the home buying process is connect with a real estate agent or someone in the real estate field who can kind of point you in the right direction. Normally I say start with a lender, but an agent can direct you to a good lender if you don't know one already, and vice versa. I mean, if you have a good lender in your life, maybe they know a good real estate agent, but start with one or the other that you might know. Chances are out of your entire, database, you probably have a real estate agent or a lender in your life. So start there. Like I said, a real estate agent can connect you with all the real estate resources you would need. Connecting with a lender is the only real way you're going to know like what your budget is, and what your financial health is. Are you able to buy a home? I mean, is that kind of how you saw the process?
Yeah, for sure. Connecting with a lender, I feel like was really important for us, especially with our unique situation of looking at duplexes and figuring out kind of that extra possible, confusion over the prospective rental income and things like that. So, I think it's really important if you have kind of a unique situation or, you just kind of want to see how much house you can actually afford. It's going to be more accurate than just going to like one of those websites and typing your numbers into the calculator because they don't know, what your local market and things like that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the local market thing because my main advice to new home buyers is when it comes to picking a lender, I would focus less on rates and fees because while those are very important, obviously, to your buying process, most rates and fees from lender to lender are going to be very similar, and most lenders can match another lender's offer, whether that be on rates or fees, because if you have a lower rate, you probably have higher fees. If you have higher fees, you probably have a lower rate, vice versa. So they can usually pull some strings there to match. You're just going to pay more fees or have a higher rate. But them having knowledge of your local market is huge because they can put you in connection with the local programs. Every real estate market is different with their local programs that can actually help you buy your home, especially first-time home buyers. So I always say go with somebody who's going to pick up the phone on nights and weekends when we're trying to make offers. You don't want someone who says, I only work 9 to 5, because most of the time we're putting in offers after business hours. That's when you're able to see the house. That's when we're putting in offers. So that is a huge one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in addition to the actual like numbers part of it, having a local person is, in my opinion, better like on the customer service end of things. Because like you said, you have somebody or you want somebody who's going to be available to just text you back really quick when you're running a new purchase price, for example, or things like that. And like when we closed on our home, it was like a Friday night, I think, or not closed, but when we put our offer in on our home, it was a Friday night. And we were having a back and forth with our lender. And so that would have been really hard to do with somebody from like Rocket Mortgage or something. So
yeah. And I believe it was the weekend before Christmas. Because I want to say we got our offer accepted like right around Christmas time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Working with someone local that we knew was huge in that regard. Yeah. And besides that too, if you think you're, too far out from even buying a home, it's good to talk with a lender at any time because speaking with a lender is free. Mm-hmm. You're not paying for a lender at all until a deal is done. And, any of their origination fees stuff that comes out of the purchase. So even if you think you're like a year out from buying a home, but you want to buy a home at some point, I think it's very important you connect with the lender. They can take a look at your financials and say, here's what you need to do, A, B, and C, and then you'll be set, 6-8 months from now. Or you might discover you can afford a home right now. Because, again, you might be hearing a lot of stuff that it's not necessarily true, or your neighbor's pen pal's cousin said it's a terrible time to buy a home and it's going to cost you this amount. They have no idea because they don't know your financial picture. So a lender can put you in the right direction. And I have another episode too, misconceptions in mortgages, which is a lot about that kind of thing. So go check that out. Moving on from that though, once you know you can afford a home and you kind of have your budget, you've got an agent, they're going to want to know, what do you need in a home? So that is the next big one, is what do you need in a home? And for first-time home buyers, I stress, what do you need in a home that makes it livable for the first 2 to 5 years that you own it? Because the first one's not going to be your dream home. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, we'd all love to have a mansion as our first home, but that's not the case. So what I say to a lot of my first-time home buyers when we start the home buying process is, think about what you need in your everyday life and just kind of walk through your daily routine. Does this house work for that?
Right.
So, because I mean, when you get set up on a search, they're going to want to know bedrooms, bathrooms. So kind of what did you think about that process? I mean, in finding out like what you need.
I would say our situation was a little unique just because I think most places we were looking at, we knew we were going to have to downsize a little bit. So that was kind of already in the back of my head, is thinking about how am I going to manage in less space. But I think the things, and I guess everybody is different, but the things that are important that you can't change about a house are like the location, and I don't know, which involves like how close you are to work, how close you are to friends and family, just the neighborhood in general, and if it's like on the up and up or the other way. So I suppose those are things that were a little bit higher on the priority list for me personally. And then, things like fewer bedrooms were kind of just things that we had to learn how to deal with. But it's been totally fine because we're still on our way to like meeting our financial goals. So it's just kind of what you're looking for in the home buying process, whether it's,
Yeah.
creating equity in a home, or if it's you're working your way up to your dream home, either way.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point too, because I didn't even think about that in the home buying process, just in general. Determine what your financial goals are for that house. Mm-hmm. Because I deal with a lot of buyers who, they want something turnkey and they're not looking at it as an investment. They just want to move in and have it be, ready for them. Whereas the way you and I look at properties is we want there to be obvious flaws that we know that we can fix and live with for a while so that we can build up equity quicker, and we're looking at it more as an investment.
Right.
I have to be careful when working with clients because I don't want to, push my home agenda on them, because they might be looking for something that's ready right now and they don't care if it, doesn't appreciate super quick. Mm-hmm. You touched on another point too that's huge, and it's location. Because yes, while bedrooms, bathrooms, whatever aesthetics you want in the house are important, the location is the biggest part. Because I will not tell you how many times I get clients who they're like, I really hate this neighborhood, but I love the pictures of this house. I still want to go look at it. Mm-hmm. And early on in my career, I'd just be like, okay, we'll go look at it. And as soon as we get out of the car, they're like, no, this isn't going to work. I don't like the neighborhood. So now I'm just like, if you don't like the neighborhood, we're not even going to go, because it's not worth it. I mean, you could love a house, but if you're like scared to walk out your front door, you're never going to be comfortable with it.
Right.
So it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
You can't pick up the house and move it. Once you find the home that you're looking for, then you're working with your agent to put an offer. Again, this is a little bit different for you.
Yeah.
Because I am an agent. So I kind of structured the deal for us. But I mean, I'm sure you had input in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, how did you feel about that?
I felt, it's hard to describe because I'm not the best with decisions in general. It's hard for me to, especially something as big as buying a house. I really needed the guidance of somebody like you who really knows what you're talking about. And obviously I have the benefit of you being my partner. So you were there to support me in other ways. So I would say that was critical for me. But once we got the offer in and started, I think we had a couple counters back and forth. But once we got that initial offer in, I felt like a sense of relief just because I was like, yep, this is kind of what we're doing. So once the ball was rolling, so to speak, I felt the process was really smooth. And yeah, even with the counters, it made sense. And I felt good every step of the way that we were making the right decision. So
yeah. And to another point you talked about too, and this is just going to sound like real estate agent propaganda because I'm a real estate agent, but when you are buying a home, the buyer's agent is free to you. Mm-hmm. So use one, because especially if you're a first-time home buyer, there are a bunch of intricacies to the purchase agreements and contracts that you don't understand. You just won't.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you've bought multiple homes, I know most investor clients that I know and talk to, if they don't have a real estate license, they still use an agent to buy. They don't mess around with that kind of stuff on their own because they know the liability, the risk. They just don't want to mess with it. And they know that getting a buyer's agent is free. So make sure you work with an agent because they're going to tell you how to structure those deals. And again, that's another one. I have another episode, Winning Multiple Offers, and we dive deep on contracts and all the different things you can do. So go check that episode out if you have questions on that. But really, you should be referring to your agent because they're the expert. So kind of, take what they say to heart because they have your best interest in mind.
Yeah. And like what you were saying before is like the agents know like the intricacies of contracts and like the levers that you can pull to make your offer more appealing or things like that. And so just like as an example with when we were submitting our offer on our house is I think the sellers were a little scared that we wanted a long close date because they thought that meant that we like weren't serious about the house or whatever. And you were able to, I think we ended up putting more earnest money down as a show of like, we want this house. We just need the long close date because of our rental situation. And so those are things that you wouldn't necessarily know to do if you didn't have a real estate agent in your corner. So yeah, just as like own personal experience of things that, I mean, I didn't even know earnest money was a thing before knowing you. Obviously, I've learned a little bit about the industry, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just funny because that's actually the next step that I was going to talk about is, a lot of people I work with, they don't know what earnest money is until it's explained to them. So within 2 days of your signed purchase agreement where both parties have agreed that, you're going to buy this house, you have to put your earnest money down. So earnest money is essentially just money you're putting down to say that you're serious about buying the house. So now you have some money in the investment. Generally, I say I start at least 1%. Like you described, there are different situations where the seller wants to see a little bit more money to know that you're serious if there are some things that are a little bit different about the situation. But that money actually goes towards the purchase price of your home. So it's not money you lose out. It's not like at Topgolf where you pay like $100 just to reserve the right to like reserve a bay. So that actually goes towards the purchase price. So if you're planning on affording a home, this is money you should already have. You should be comfortable with spending the couple $1,000s because you're going to have to pay it eventually.
Right. Yeah.
So then that leads us then to the inspection process. Mm-hmm. So I know not everyone gets an inspection. It's an optional thing. And I know during really hot sellers markets, buyers are giving up their right to inspection. It's not something I would ever recommend. I've had clients do it successfully, but we had an inspection done on our property.
Yeah.
And I don't think either of us would have been comfortable if we hadn't.
Correct. And the inspection, like, there wasn't anything shocking on it, but it's still something that we wanted done to, know what we were getting into and plan out what sorts of repairs and updates we wanted to do.
Yeah, and I totally think spending the $500 to $700 on an inspection is worth the headache down the road if huge expenses come up.
Yes, like in the grand scheme of things, it's not gonna break the bank when you're buying a house.
Again, it's more to protect you from spending more money down the road.
Right. Yeah.
Or if from our perspective too, as investors, just knowing like what needs to be done the soonest, so you can make kind of a priority list of what things need to get done.
Yeah.
The next one isn't so much as like, I don't know, a step as in just in general advice. throughout this process, get your lender anything they need from you as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Like, and I used to work in the mortgage industry too years ago when I first got out of college, and there are so many people that I know people are touchy about their financials, but it's like, well, why do you need a pay stub? Why do you need my bank statement? It's like, well, you are asking for like $400,000 from the bank. So a couple pay stubs, a couple bank statements, I think is pretty normal to ask for when you're asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know. So to keep the loan clean, you were the one who had to do most of that stuff. How did you feel about that process?
I thought it was really smooth. Our lender was very clear about like the documents that he needed and when, and I'm more than happy to help the process go as smoothly as possible. So I thought it went very not complicated and pretty smoothly.
Again, so I mean, you're W-2, so those are generally pretty easy, straightforward loans, especially if you're not earning like a bunch of commission on the side. Just know that the more income streams you have and that you're using to qualify, it's going to be more work.
Right.
And me as a 1099 employee, like those loans are way more complicated, way more documentation. You're going to need 2 years of everything. So that's something to be prepared for too, depending on your line of work. That also goes hand in hand with do not take out new credit. I had this question too on a video earlier that someone's like, well, I get why you don't want to take a new purchase because then you might not have money for closing, right? And I'm like, that's not why.
Right.
I mean, that's obviously you need to have the money for closing, but the reason you don't want to make a large purchase or take out new credit is that is going to mess up your DTI, your debt to income, which is essentially what you're getting qualified on. So if you take out a new credit card and you buy new furniture to celebrate getting the new house, that could throw your DTI out of whack, and now you can't get the house. You can no longer afford it credit-wise. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I feel like that needs to be said a lot because some lenders don't tell their clients that. Some agents don't tell their clients that. So do not take out new credit because you don't want to mess up your DTI. Nothing like that came up for us because we're pretty frugal. I don't think we open up trade lines very often.
Right.
Is there anything else like in the buying process that you found, I don't know, noteworthy throughout that we haven't covered?
The one thing I would say kind of along the lines of getting your loan approved in credit is your credit score will take a little bit of a dip when you when the loan gets approved and like put on your account because it's a new account and it's in a large sum of money. So, but mine's already come back. So it's just maybe a little bit of I guess whatever the equivalent would be for credit, but it's sticker shock on your credit score, but nothing to worry about, I would say. But
yeah, and in the end, it's as long as you buy within your price range and you're making those payments, it's actually going to be huge for your credit score.
Yeah.
Because when you're making those large payments, it's probably, well, that is the largest credit line you have out.
Yeah.
So that's
I don't have another $500,000 in debt that you don't know about.
Yeah. So that's going to be huge. So then the next step is just close.
Yep.
So again, you want to make sure you don't have any odd comings and goings of large sums of money because the lender's going to want that documented. Mm-hmm. Sign all the documents at the closing table. Your agent's probably going to give you a gift. Your lender might give you a gift. I'd say when you close, you're kind of like, that was underwhelming.
Yeah. After signing your name like 800 times.
Well, especially when you're buying, you might have done months worth of searching, putting in offers, getting heartbroken from losing out on offers. And then you get to the closing table and they hand you the like single key and you're like, oh, this is it. So, I mean, I think I can honestly say this has been the best financial decision I've ever made is to buy a home. I don't know if you...
Yeah, I'm really happy with what we did and where we
and
everything.
Again, I mean, just a little insight to what we're doing. We are house hacking. We own a duplex, and we're actually living cheaper now than we were when we were renting. So for everyone out there that's like, well, I can't afford it, neither of us are like millionaires, and we have a fairly high interest rate.
Yeah.
And we live cheaper now than when we were renting.
Yep.
And just because we kind of knew the route that we want to go and we have a long-term goal. But that's just to say, if you're out there and you're watching this and you're like, I can't afford a home, there is hope.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Anything else that you think we didn't cover?
I don't think so.
Ooh, something that I want to throw on there. If it's going to be your primary residence, make sure you homestead it so you get the tax break. We still haven't done that yet.
We need to do that.
So we have till the end of the year, but don't wait.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it's fairly simple.
Yeah. It's just months worth of hard work, and then...
Yeah, it's more of an emotional labor than it is like actually like a complicated thing.
Yeah, I would say like the worst part was because we had such a long close date to accommodate our rental situation was like our loan stuff was approved like pretty quickly, and then it was just like a month of nothing until we could close, and so it was just waiting until the day. And
yeah, and that's a really good point too. I have a lot of buyers that they'll check in. I'll check with them weekly and be like, oh, nothing new. We just got to get to close. And they're always like, well, should I be doing something? Is there something I should do? I'm like, no, the only thing you should be doing is not making large purchases.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And that was great to have like you and our lender being like, yep, you're good. Nothing to worry about.
All right. Well, other than that, thanks for coming on, Maria.
No problem.